Welcome back to 23-Minute Reads with me, Maya D. This is kind of like my accountability vlog because in these short videos, I share with you my takeaways from my current reading. Right now, let's see if we can get this without the glare. Joan Myers Brown and the Audacious Hope of the Black Ballerina. This is book 13, y'all. Book 13 of my 23 to 23 challenge, where I'm reading 23 minutes per day, every day, as an action of self-love, as an investment into myself, as a way of providing myself with some consistency in an ever-changing world. Hoping that you will join me along in this journey by watching these videos, reading the book, and dropping some comments down there in that comment section so that there's an actual dialogue going on. Having in mind that while I have several decades of experience as a dancer, an educator, and a curriculum writer, I am not the know-all be-all for this book. I'm simply providing a space for dialogue. Well, this week I read, let me get my notes. I read pages 75 through 112, and here are my 3 takeaways. Takeaway number 1 is bilingual. So this idea of bilingual is a concept that's come up in one of our earlier readings, where someone expressed the necessity of Black dancers to be bilingual in their dance forms. So based on that person's experience, their lived experience, one had to be well-versed in multiple dance forms in order to have a successful career. And while I have had a successful performance career as a dancer versed predominantly in West African forms, I found that my career in academia has asked or desired me to be bilingual in my dance forms. So I posit success is relative to both the person and the situation. And in the recital and opportunities section of chapter 2 of this book, which is titled Spectacularly Black on Black, 1940s through 1950s, we are offered another way of viewing bilingual. Here's a quote from the book. JB learned from Sydney the importance of teaching students to be bilingual in dance using their minds as well as their bodies, explaining that they were required to read and to do research. So this type of bilingual, using your mind and your body, reminds me of something I heard another dancer say. And this dancer was speaking of a charge that they felt from Dr. Halifu Osumare to be both a dancer and a scholar. And that can seem like a lot, right? Dancing and scholarship. So how do you get there? How do you do that? One of the things that I had to think about was thinking of dance as a multi-layered conversation. And in order to drive that dialogue, that conversation forward, I need to be adding ideas to that dialogue and to that conversation. But you can only do that. I can only do that if I understand and I am aware of things that were said already, so that I'm not repeating, I'm actually going forward, right? And that happens through, or I believe it happens through both listening and through reading, so that you are adding to the dialogue rather than just repeating what's already been said. And guess what? We are literally doing that right now with these videos, and you can help it go even further by dropping comments in that comment section below, so that we are driving this dialogue about this book and about dance forward, or just dropping a book emoji or typing the word book into the comments, just so that I know that you're here with me, so that I can speak to you as we move on to takeaway number 2. Takeaway number 2 is exposing. And I feel that dance is very much about sharing. And through sharing, a dancer exposes the observer to what has happened, what is happening, and what's going to happen in the future. In chapter 3, which is titled But Black is Beautiful, the 1950s through the 80s, we find this section titled From Ballerina to Beau Beige. I flipped that. Wait. The section is titled From Ballerina to Beige Beau. And in that section, we find these words, and I quote, The chorus performed what she explained as old-time jazz, but managed to incorporate ballet and modern dance as well, end quote. As I read this description of the performances at Newtown Tavern, it reminded me of an earlier comment that was made. So right now we're nestled in the 1950s to the 1980s, but in that chapter 1, it was expressed that there were no designated spaces for ballet and modern dance in the 1920s and 1930s, right? Because of the development of these things and because where America was in its development, not like where it's located. I'm also reminded as I read this section of a charge that was given during that 1930s kind of time from dance critic John Martin, who charged Americans with being open to viewing these dance forms, this dance form that was developing, this modern dance form, right? He coined that term modern dance because he felt like this thing that was developing was modern compared to ballet, right? So that's why it's called modern dance, in case you didn't know. And as we read further through this section, BDG reminds us of a comment that John Hines made in relation to what was going on in those cabarets, because in the cabaret type performance. And that was that exposure to these other dance genres were experienced by the audience and the owner. So in these cabaret experiences, this exposure was happening to these new dance forms and kind of creating an audience for me generations later, right? So like this exposure that these people are experiencing in that venue leaves them open to viewing this thing that's developing and coming along. So like, the elders created an audience for me and my friends, and I really love that exposure created an audience for me. Takeaway number 3 is Larry Steele. His productions grosses $400,000 to $500,000 a year and keeps 40 to 50 people at work from 40 to 45 weeks out of the year. Now that's a quote, and this quote is actually taken from an 8-page spread in the 1960s Ebony magazine. And in that spread, it speaks about the impact of the work done by Larry Steele. It can be found in the Steele, Calloway, Bailey section of chapter 3. And this stood out to me because I have a strong desire to know what was done and by whom was it done. In reading one of our previous books, African American Dance, I learned more about the impact of the Cotton Club, like who owned the Cotton Club, what was going on in the Cotton Club, and so forth, right? In this book, I learned, and I quote, in 1952, Larry Steele's Smart Affairs was the only complete all-black show on Broadway since the folding of the Cotton Club. Following the Atlantic City and Broadway run, this show toured the nation, end quote. Having a consistent stretch of work in your field, your expertise, your artistry can be a challenge even in today's world. Finding good work that paid a fair wage during that time of the 1950s was definitely an issue. Larry Steele created a production that toured the nation, keeping 40 to 50 people paid for like 90% of the year. That's amazing. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? Have you heard of Larry Steele before? And if so, what do you know? Drop it in the comments below so that we can all grow together. And I'm also always looking for additional books. So if you have an amazing book, drop that in the comments below, or just drop a book emoji so that I know that you are here for me and with me. My name is Maya D. This has been 23-Minute Reads. Thank you for staying to the end. Stay blessed, spread a good word, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.